Alrighty, I want to talk about how to get a job in a recession. Now, you may be like me where you're sort of semi-skilled. I've got a forklift license, a crane license, a truck license, 3.5 years on a forklift, about 2 years experience on a crane, 6 months driving a truck on the road, certificate 3 in competitive systems and practices, half a spray painting apprenticeship and experience with spray painting, sandblasting, and about 8 years experience in the building industry. I'm sort of semi-skilled, and what I realise, there's these places that you hear about, especially if, and this is a good option for you for a temporary basis, is to go and get a job at one of those day labour places. One of those ones where you just ring up every day or whatever, and you'll get a bit of work here and a bit of work there. That's always a good option to get a bit of work. But often enough, when you're in these places, you'll realise there's a whole stack of other people who are also trying to get back into full-time work. And they'll talk about all the other workplaces around the city or around your region. And often enough, they will talk about places that they've worked at that they said, like I was talking to a bloke who was a bit fat on it, that I was working with at one of these places, and he said about the chicken processing plant that I'm now at, and he went there, and because he's got a bit of a guts on him, he had to do a lot of bending over, and it was no good for him, and he said he only lasted there 2 days. And I'd heard about that place previously from other people, plus from him, because he'd actually worked there. And you sort of hear about places that other people have worked at previously, that their brothers have worked at, or their sisters have worked at, or their mates worked at, or their mates are supervisor there, or whatever. And some of these places are well known to be shitholes to work in. Or, people will sort of say you've got to be desperate when you, are working there. And basically what it comes down to is these places are doing very simple, unskilled work, stuff that it's lucky they don't train monkeys to do it, and while a lot of people may say, oh, you don't want a job there, you don't want to go there, or I was there and I left after 2 days, or I got a job there and, they told me you got the job and then I didn't bother turning up. With a lot of these places, they go through quite a number of people. They don't pay the best wages. It may not be full-time work, but it also may, often enough, actually will be full-time work. But they go through a lot of people, so they're always after new people. Now, there are people who feel that they'd just rather not work there and live off their credit card in the meantime, or redraw money back on their mortgage, or their wife's already working so they can sort of just get by with that. And they'll not bother going to these places. Other people have got a job lined up in a month, 2 months. So they go to these places and work there and say, oh, yeah, I'll stay here, yeah, no worries, yeah, good job, blah, blah, and they'll stay there. And then when their other job comes up the day before, they'll say to the boss, well, I've got a full-time job somewhere else, and then they'll just go to that full-time job. And they're smart enough to have not basically, used up all their credit card, and maxed it out, because it's not the best money, but they've got a bit of money coming in that they can live off until this other job that they know they're going to get, comes through in a month or two's time. And this chicken processing plant was one of the places that I heard about. And, so I went there. There was a few other places I went to, and they basically didn't have anything going, but I also tried the chicken place, and within 5 minutes I had a job. It's only part-time, but in the meantime I've been to a number of other places that are intending to, take people on full time. But you tend to notice, like I've been to a vineyard and they said, oh, we might take you on, but the bloke the vineyard wasn't his real money earner. He's got a number of businesses, and I think he was a bit concerned about his money situation, so they sort of put you off and put you off and put you off. They keep bringing back, oh, look, not yet, but maybe in another couple of weeks. Oh, look, and that sort of goes on a bit. And then in the end, they just decide not to because they're too concerned about the way the economy's going, to sort of risk hiring you and then, being short of money themselves. And, there's also another place that I have been to that's a medical waste place. Fantastic money. 45 to 50 hours work a week, pretty much all just sitting in a truck, and, chucking a bit of stuff out into a machine on occasion. Not bad money at all, between sort of probably $930 to maybe slightly over $1,000 clear per week. And theoretically, I was going to get a phone interview from the HR department, but I haven't heard from that. But that doesn't matter because I got yet another one that I've been talking to today. And basically, I was told about this years ago by the blokes who were on my apprenticeship. There is massive dollars in raising mice and crickets and mealworms for the reptile pet industry, and these guys focus primarily on grasshoppers, I think, and probably do mealworms, and I think they do a handful of scorpions, but I'm going to go there on Friday and see for real, and it may even be in the description what they do, but there's a chance I'll be going on full time there. They need another 4 people. If you sort of go looking, don't really bother hitting up all the obvious places all the time. Go to the places that are sort of like on the edge of suburbia, where it's not really a general large industrial area, because those industrial areas, a lot of people go around there. In the newspaper, people at these job agencies say, always apply for the ones in the newspaper. You ring up and you're about the 50th person in the last hour to ring up. It's pointless, Almost pointless. The monkey jobs in there's one of them that was a removalist, and all they wanted was just somebody to help them load the truck. Well, if you ring there at 11 o'clock in the morning, they'll probably chastise you and say, why did you even bother ringing? Because they've been taking calls since damn well 6 a.m. or something. And the job agencies always push you got to look in the newspaper, but so many times, if you go to the major industrial areas or go look in the newspaper or whatnot, you mightn't get it. But if you go to the places that you hear are places that people don't like to work at, you'll easily get a job. If you go to the small places that have just moved in or whatnot, or have opened another branch, you can easily enough, might get into them, especially if they've got a larger branch in the capital and they're opening a smaller branch out here. Or the ones that are sort of on the edge of suburbia and are sort of like light industry or stuff like that. Just keep an eye on some of these places, and if new places pop up, go on there and have a look and talk to them, and give them your resume and whatnot. And you'll be surprised about things like community newsletters and notice boards at shops and stuff like that, but you'll be shocked that there's even jobs in there. And this one I've been talking about, that was a notice board at a shop, and they're wanting full-time people, but they've got this real thing where they just want locals. So that's why they didn't put it in the newspaper, because they would have got people from the larger city as opposed to one of the country towns around here. And you'll be sort of surprised that even these dotty little community newsletters that you get in your mailbox and that, there's jobs in them. And sure, it might only be 15, 20 hours a week, but if you can jostle 2 of these 20-hour jobs a week together, well, you've got a full 40 hours. And you can pay your mortgage. you know, and you mightn't be flying ahead because there may be days where they clash and you've got to sort of work it out between them, or give one priority over the other, or hope that one's more flexible, you know, and you may sort of, they both want you on the same day, and so you miss out on a couple of days. But, you know, if you get 4 days a week, that's 4 days a week, you know. So yeah, that's a bit of advice on getting a job in a recession. There's another extreme method that really, really works, and I read about this in a women's magazine, one of those sort of, you know, magazines where they have a lot more personal stories and stuff. And occasionally there's blokes who read it, like me when I'm reading my mum's ones, when I'm over there and she's, you know, doing something else for a while. And I'll just sort of flick through these magazines, and one of the ones I read in one of those magazines was this bloke who, every recession we've had since, holy cow, the 1980s and stuff like that, he has always been in work full time. He is as brazen as you wouldn't believe it when it comes to what he does, but he has never had any troubles with being out of work, and he's been in, you know, full-time work and stuff like that. Even in the depths of heavy recessions, like the real bad one we had in the early 90s here, that, you know, we had, there was a lending firm, and I think I've got papers still on it. I might have thrown them out. But this lending firm was going since the mid-50s, basically, I think. And this bloke took it over from his father, and he went along with the speculative hype of the late 80s before, you know, Black Thursday and all that, whatever it was, in 87, the, you know, stock exchange crashed then. Anyway, we didn't sort of get that initially. We kept on flying. And in 1990, this place hit the deck like a sack of shit, and there was 2 billion disappear in a town of not quite 200,000 people, or around the 200,000 people mark. They wiped out 2 billion with the collapse of this. That caused a real bad recession here, and it actually sort of, we basically had a recession countrywide, and, you know, the interest rates were far too high. We'd floated the dollar a few years prior, and it hit the deck big time. But this bloke was still fine during that recession. And what he would do was he would get a big sign saying, work wanted, we'll try anything, or something like that. And he would get this on a piece of cardboard and stand out beside the off-ramp of a major bridge, on the off-ramp of a freeway, or something big like that, where there was bucket loads of cars, a major intersection, like a real bustling intersection, and he would stand up there like that, and he said he'd be there for, during that real bad recession, he was there for about a day and a half. During some of the other recessions, he's only there for 3 hours. Have a ute pull up beside him, like a light truck pull up beside him, and say, get in, mate, and he'd get in. Right, what can you do? This, that, and the other, and he'd just rattle off what he could do. Well, great. You got a job? You know, we might as well, we're going back now to the business. I'll show you a look around when we get there. And it was, you know, someone coming back from buying stuff or whatever, back to the business, and then pull up the business, show them all, and then, you know, offer to drop them off home again or whatever, and start tomorrow. You know, like, honestly, he's got times like 3 hours, 5 hours, a day and a half at worst, that he's got to stand out there in the middle of recession with this placard saying, work wanted, we'll try anything. And he gets work. You know, and he might have been on part-time for, you know, 3 weeks or whatever. Every time, within 6 weeks, or maybe only 2 or 3 weeks, he was, and sometimes straight away, he was full-time. I mean, imagine being in a recession, being out there for 5 hours, and you're full-time, that afternoon. You know, like what a thing, you know. So that is a real good way that works, but that takes bloody cordite balls to do that. You know, real balls. But you know, it does work. So there are a few of my tips on sort of getting work in a recession. I will say that that's one thing that I've sort of been slowly strung out on, why I haven't been getting into full-time work so quickly, is because some of these places that say they want to take you on full-time, they sort of string you out, and you keep hoping, and they look at their finances going down and down and down, and then you realise it's not going to happen, so then you go out and you get another place that offers you full-time, and then yeah, and that sort of has been slowing me up, you know, hoping that people are going to, you know, employ me like they say they intend to, but then they change their mind due to the fact that they're going. But hey, let's face it, you know, there's nothing wrong with having 2 part-time jobs, like I said before, and this place I'm been talking to today, they're hiring over the next 2 months, and I've got quite a chance, I assume, of getting in there. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's a few tips on how to get a job during a recession.